All right, back after lunch. I had the green curry, and then I tried the red curry with the chicken, but I put the chicken aside because I'm vegan, because I wanted to have the red sauce.
Nice.
Did you have the curry?
I have an aversion to food from troughs, so I walk down the street. It's an affliction. Plus, I'm gluten-free, which normally doesn't come up in conversation. So I want to spin the wheel of destiny there.
Spin the wheel of destiny.
Yes.
What happens when have you spun the wheel of destiny before? Or what happened?
The price. It's not fun. We don't need to talk about that now, though. That's hopefully more compelling content to come in this recording.
So we were talking yesterday. Let me introduce you.
Yes.
How about that? Scott Pruitt here of Pivotal, and Scott. We were talking yesterday with Kim Bannerman, who was just on, and we were talking about data-driven applications, and we're at Cloud Foundry Summit, and so it might be appropriate to talk about data-driven applications in this new world. And kind of one of the interesting kind of discussions I've had with people lately is about how data-driven applications are kind of like turning turning, I think, the API community a little bit, into a little bit of a twist, because now, HTTP was like great back in the day, for composed applications. Yeah, we love it. But now with, increasingly components being part of like the application development process, right? Pulling all those components together, microservice, blah, 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 blah. But now we're like seeing data, which is totally unbound, right?
Yes.
Totally, it has to be, internalized and done all different things. So you're talking to me about kind of philosophy that you're thinking about, like kind of in terms of like, building like opinionated systems, for example.
Right. I kind of stumbled on these learnings as I went through a project that I did at Pivotal called Pcf Metrics, where increasingly we were using data not just to draw UIs and draw screens like data viz, but to drive underlying behaviors, right? And to increase automation and even going down the path of optimization as a goal, whereby I give you a set of conditions or trade-offs I'm willing to endure, and the system balances and optimizes as best it can. Didn't go very far in that, but it illuminated a path for me that was really interesting. And then I did a project with Google, our friends at Google, around a retail demo, where we took some of the really fantastic things in Google Cloud Platform, like the Vision API, the Natural Language Processing API, and TensorFlow, and we built a very simple demo to take a tweet and turn it into a personalized offer.
Wow.
So here again is this notion of like data-driven personalization, no longer a one-size-fits-all application, but it's dynamic, it learns, and it iterates to something very interesting.
Right.
I also did a project with the federal government, which was a huge consumer of data, and you started to see this pattern emerge where data as a walled garden was not going to function anymore. Right?
No, doesn't quite work that way.
And so this notion
But there is this idea of the wall, but that's another matter.
Well, and that's a nice, comforting thing, right? That's like the crown jewels. The data is the most sensitive thing any organization can have. And there's certainly, all sorts of rules and regulations around data and who can access it. So it's an entirely logical thing. However, I think it's somewhat short-sighted just to say like, no, data's here and app is over here.
Right.
And so to increasingly blur those lines and pull them together in an agile workflow is really interesting to me.
One person described like managing data a little bit like diplomacy and almost like conduct that you need to take the data through the process.
Right.
And it's it's almost like orchestrated. It almost seems like something out of like, the way it's described to me is like something out of like the royal court.
Yes.
Where like, the data has to go into the drawing room first before it can go, out into the garden. And if it gets out in the garden, it goes beyond the hedge, forget it. It's all over. Right. You got to bring it back into the court, but whatever, But that kind of seems like where we are right now. It's like, how does that data kind of like make its way, and how do you, and what are the gates on it, and what are like the constraints?
Absolutely.
And there's some corollaries there, it seems like, to application architectures, where you hear more people talking about, well, it needs to be open but yet constrained.
Yes. Yes. But we have this interesting thing called the Service Broker API,
right,
that really gives you that level of governance and control, right? If it's available to me, then I can use it. And that should be the extent of the equation.
Right.
I think what we're seeing now is this emerging problem space. And I think we'll hopefully spend a lot of time thinking through those sort of challenges.
Oh, there's plenty of time, Scott.
Well, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true, because I think people are moving very quickly into this world, where data is part of the app development lifecycle, and having a balanced team of full stack engineers and data scientists and data engineers and designers becomes a real competitive advantage. Right?
Is there a need? What do you think of like the concept of middleware in this context, where you almost have like this middle layer where the data almost has a place there,
right,
and then you need to find ways to then use the data in the applications?
Yeah,
does it make sense to containerize the data inside those middleware?
Interesting. That I don't know. I'm a product manager after all. And
I'm a journalist, and I know.
I'm less interested in those problems, because I think somebody will figure that out.
Yeah. Hey.
But I think...
so you can relay my feedback.
Absolutely. I think I lost my train of thought.
Oh, we were talking about, you said you're a product manager,
yes,
and I said I'm a journalist.
Taking away any question I can't answer.
Yeah, but more so, it seems like I guess more so the question then becomes is like managing data inside Cloud Foundry, for example.
Yes, okay, there you are.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of a chicken and egg problem. You need to get data to work with data.
Yeah.
Where do you put the data that you already have? Is that the right data that we should be using?
Right.
We see challenges on both sides. And
right.
That, again, is where you bring data science in to help understand what's available. You bring design in to help understand what's palatable or desirable, and then you start to work from there. I think in the past we've been development first.
Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah.
And I think now it's really an exploration and understanding, an effort to bring that sort of insight to bear, and then development is easy.
So that's why you built that retail example, right?
It was an interesting experiment that we wanted to run, right? And in the process we learned that yes, it is possible to use this stuff, and in fact it's easy to just CF create service, CF bind service, and then immediately I have access to TensorFlow or the Vision API or the natural language processing API.
And then are you setting up the data according to persona when, for example, in that, because it needs the system is training itself to send gifts,
sure.
Right?
We had a very simplistic architecture, so we didn't have to encounter all those problems.
Like if I was sent diapers, right? I'd be like, wait a second,
right?
What's going on here,
right?
Yeah. But if I was sent like a 10% off to get 10% off like a 6-pack or
right
or tennis balls, whatever, that would make sense.
Yes, for certain. Right. Yes. So I think it's it's an interesting place again where I think we're starting to understand the value of data in context of an application.
Yeah.
There's the challenge of where does that data come from? Are we generating the right data?
Right.
Is that data of use? And so that's why, again, I keep coming back to this notion of we need to understand that before we proceed.
Right.
In the days of just pure MVP, kind of iterate through, you could just start coding and figure it out.
Right.
But here, if you're going to bake data in from day one, I think you need to understand what the data is, what it means, and what you're going to do with it. It's not something you wing, right?
Yeah.
Our example of the retail demo was a tweet.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't a lot of data to think about. It was what we did with that tiny amount of data that was interesting.
Wow.
We understood the sentiment. We understood, if there's an image, what the content of that image is. We were able to turn that into, some notion of knowledge. Here's who this person is. Here's what this person likes, and here's what this person needs.
So that would trigger the tweet.
Then yes, we'd go and compare it against our inventory and say, do we have a matching item that we can sell back or we could offer at a discount if you come in store and buy today. So I can share the link out to the demo. And
I'd love to see that.
Video that I recorded. And I talked about it earlier today, so you missed out. It's quite all right. I'll be happy to give you the
I'll check out the link.
Awesome.
So you seeing a lot of customers interested in TensorFlow?
I don't have as much access to that.
Yeah. You guys are just using it because...
we used it because, again, our goal was to exercise Google and Pivotal products together. But I think what that's done is prove that these things are ready for use. I know Google's investing heavily in teaching people how to use this stuff, which, to be fair, is still incredibly complex, and bringing that down to earth a bit. And I think that really is the race to make an API or an interface that programmers can use without much thought. It's not that they're stupid, it's just that this is hard stuff. And if we make it consumable and easy to use, then I think we're off to the races.
It really is the next generation of application.
I think it has to be.
It has to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because digital transformation, the thing we always talk about, cannot possibly exist without data.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just iterating on the margins. You're not doing anything at the core.
Yeah, I think we've been playing with this idea of how we would use, data to, do better, gain better understanding, right?
Right.
And, in developing it internally, the question always becomes like, what are you going to collect, right? What data are you actually going to use, and how can you verify it, right?
Yes.
How can you make sure that your conclusions are accurate?
Yes.
I think
the
training is accurate.
You can iterate against that problem. I think you need to define the problem you're trying to solve, right? And then you can iterate against it with simple agile principles, right? There's no real magic there. It's just try a thing. Does it work? Does it not? If not, change it and try that thing, right? But still, you should have some sort of thesis going in that you're trying to understand or prove.
It seems almost like with what we heard today from the in the keynotes this morning, is that you can almost sense this new direction, right? For Cloud Foundry.
Yes.
Or, like this path that it is going to continue to travel down, because that is the next generation. And the architecture has to be right for it, right?
Yes.
The Cloud Foundry architecture was right for for those days when the applications were just more composed, right? And you didn't have to worry about, thinking about all the data kind of parts that really were part of that, and now are kind of becoming much more part of the application.
The microservices, the way that things are partitioned up, so multiple teams can work on them and iterate in isolation, but then assemble as a whole in the cloud. And data, I think, goes down that same path as well.
I think people forget that, or maybe forget, but are more familiar with Pivotal on on the Cloud Foundry side, right? But there's a large data group.
There is
at Pivotal too, and so this plays into that.
It does, absolutely. And I'm not the person to wax poetic about all that, but I understand Gemfire and Greenplum, two of our graduates, and the effort we're working on today is to really bring those in an opinionated way, and to begin to prescribe a set of use cases and practices and processes to go and really pull this stuff together. So to me, that is the most interesting problem to solve. Certainly there are use cases for the platform, whether you're storing logs and interpreting logs and trying to understand vulnerabilities or security threats, but I think there's tremendous value in democratizing that. I know that's an overused term, but I think it's important to say that, hey, data can play in the app domain, right? And we can build more interesting apps because of it.
What are some of your favorite apps?
I don't even know. I don't know that I
Twitter?
use a lot of apps. I mean, I'm addicted to Twitter. And love-hate relationship. Yeah. I am. I think about rage quitting all the time.
I'm trying to think of the more obscure ones that I really like. Well, not the relatively obscure. I like Voxer. Do you use Voxer ever?
No, never.
Voxer's fun. Yeah. I only use it with one other person though, so it's like my application,
stuff, right?
yeah.
I think my desire to go down this path is dwindling. It'll be interesting when my kids come around to see what they do.
Oh yeah, what is it called? Forget it. I won't even. I was gonna try to make a joke about it, but But Scott, thanks so much for taking some time to talk. It's nice to meet you here, and we'll watch that Cloud Foundry development and see what you guys are doing, and we'll keep in touch.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.